Greetings comrades, this is a quick video inspired by the video of another user, I can't remember his screen name, basically talking about how he became communist and how he discovered communism. So I thought I'd kind of share my story as well. A little history of my family. My grandfather on my mother's side was a communist. He was born 1916 or 1918. He passed away recently. He was about 93 years old, so you do the maths. He grew up during, he went through all World War II, the Cold War. You know, like I say, he died earlier this year, so he saw a lot of shit. He went to China during the Cultural Revolution, I think. Travelled the world extensively. I believe he stood for election. I think it was in the Independent Labour Party, or maybe he was doing a bit of entryism into the mainstream Labour Party. But anyway, I only really seriously became interested in Marxism quite soon before he actually had passed away. Now, my mum was also kind of sort of a Labour lefty. CND, ban the bomb, pacifism, peace protests, all that kind of stuff, and she instilled a lot of kind of moral values about the idea of only having a just war, about basically just, social justice and taking care of people and looking out for the poor and, the why inequality is a bad thing and all these kind of things. But most of I suppose my political influence came from sort of my own research. I suppose, like a lot of people, world politics kind of grabbed my attention on September the 11th, 2001. I was very kind of young then, but after that event, after coming home from school and kind of watching that on TV, I started to wonder, well, what's going on in the world, and I started kind of watching the news, and of course my mum was very much against the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan, and I was kind of, in the beginning when I was a lot younger, I kind of perceived that, well, there were very negative aspects to both of those wars. There were also kind of positive aspects. So I was kind of undivided, and I started seriously looking into different ideologies when I was about 16, 17. When I went to school, I remember in my last year of school, before that we'd been taught all the basic stuff. They teach about ancient history and stuff, and learnt about the Holocaust and all that kind of thing. So I was very much an anti-fascist and an anti-Nazi anyway to begin with. And they started to teach the kind of the lopsided, propagandistic version of Soviet history that they always teach in high school. But our teacher was he was quite left wing. He showed both sides of the story, and I think he gave a pretty good picture of kind of what was going on there. And I found myself, pretty sympathetic to the ideas of communism, the ideals of it. I usually found myself being more sympathetic towards the Soviet side of things during the Cold War, but I wasn't really a communist in any sense. I started to have detailed research of kind of ideologies at a time when I was 17 and I was self-employed at the time. I was working at home. I was living in Spain at the time, and I think I was doing phone work. And sort of in my spare time, because I was on the computer all the time, I just read about history of the 20th century, basically, from the prelude to World War One all the way up to present day in detail. And I found myself really fascinated by the ideas, just finding out about the different sides in these conflicts. I knew that what the things that were going on in the world, there was some fucked up shit, and I wanted to understand it. I wanted to take a side, so I researched all the different ideologies. I researched communism and socialism, social democracy, fascism, Nazism, um, anarchism, liberalism, conservatism, labourism, all of them. I spent time looking at capitalism, spent time studying the different economic ideas and their effects, and then it it came round to the last elections in Britain, and I had no faith in Gordon Brown or New Labour at the time. I thought they were completely illegitimate. I didn't want them to win, but I didn't want the Tories to win. I will admit that I was essentially indoctrinated that the Tories are bad. Apparently, my sister's first words were "Maggie, Maggie, Maggie, ow, ow, ow," referring to Margaret Thatcher, of course. And my mum told me a lot of stories about what life was like under the Tories during the Thatcher era, about kind of the struggles of the miners and things like that. Which even though I probably don't know as much as I probably should, but yeah, I mostly come down on the side of sort of the lefties anyway. But like I said, I viewed the Labour government as being essentially quite illegitimate. So I put my support behind Nick Clegg and the Liberal Democrats, and I spent time reading about liberalism and all that kind of stuff. I mean, at the same time, I was doing a lot of research into Marxism because I found it really interesting, but I didn't really believe in it. I thought there were too many negative aspects to the Soviet and Chinese regimes, and I didn't really, I didn't really believe in it. It took me a long time for that. And then when the election came, and I realised that we had a government that no one voted for, that kind of Nick Clegg had sold everyone who supported him down the river, and pretty much betrayed everyone. And then we had the kind of the financial crisis and all that shit. And I kind of realised that representative democracy is bullshit, and what we needed was a form of direct democracy. And again, I kind of went back to looking at the early history of the Soviet Union, began reading Lenin and Marx and Engels and Mao, and basically just from there, I think it was reading The State and Revolution by Lenin, and that started to convince me that capitalism was a bad thing. I started to look really closely at all the negative aspects of capitalism that I had previously believed in. Like I said, I was self-employed, I was making money under my own steam. But also, as I was growing up, I did some. There's a lot of call centre jobs, and timeshare, and all these. Basically, just I saw the most horrible aspects of capitalism firsthand and experienced it. I saw, workers being exploited. I saw people doing horrible things in the name of just making money, stealing from customers, stealing from their own employees. Horrible business practices, treating workers like shit, and for all in the pursuit of capital, not looking out for the workers, looking out for their own profits, anything they could do to save a buck, and just these kind of varied experiences, and it really pissed me off. I thought this was completely wrong, so I started looking at all these different movements, and one of the biggest influences on me was The Weekly Worker, which is a newspaper published by the current communist organisation that I work with, which is the Communist Party of Great Britain Provisional Central Committee. I read that paper for a whole year while I was researching, and they were anti-Stalinist, pretty much critical of the way socialism was done before. They presented a completely different viewpoint. They had a draft programme which, I agreed with pretty much everything. There are things I didn't agree with then that I do agree with now that I've thought about it more and done more research. And yeah, so that's, it's basically, it was an evolution. And even now my ideology is very, I don't want to stick a label to myself of Maoism or Stalinism or Trotskyism or Luxemburgism, just, for me, Lenin is the man. He was the best around. No one could ever bring him down. Apart from like cancer or whatever it is that he died from. But yes, that, so basically my ideology is work in progress. I think I've been an official communist, or a self-declared communist rather, for over a year now, and I've got a lot to learn. But you know, I'm working with some really great people, involved in some useful projects. I'm doing this, which I think is, you know, it's a positive thing because it helps me learn, and just the act of writing these videos and researching them has taught me so much. And the whole YouTube community thing has just exposed me to a lot of different ideas, and kind of really opened me up. You know, I've just become more and more less sectarian and more open to other people's ideas, including capitalism. You know, there was a good comment I saw. Someone said on the other guy's video who did a How I Discovered Communism, said, well, have you ever read any books about capitalism from a capitalist perspective? And I have, over the times. I guess when I started off I was like a libertarian, and I kind of went from libertarian to Maoist to sort of left Leninist, I guess. But anyway, that's kind of, you know, that's sort of a brief overview of my story. Basically, I just got pissed off with the man and capitalism and just the senselessness of the pursuit of money, and just research basically, and I guess part of my upbringing. So that's it. I mean, it's not a particularly interesting story, but if you're curious, you know, that's why. Yeah, thanks for listening.